My name is Stephen Donald, and I was diagnosed with primary central nervous system lymphoma in December 2019. I like to reuse stuff. I like to pick things up. Like I'll be at the supermarket and I'll buy a jar of a bottle of vinegar because I like the shape of the bottle and I think I can do something with it. Or I'll save things. So for instance, I've got a dog. We use lots of poo bags and they come with a little perfect cardboard tube in the centre. So I'll collect things like that. And then I collect it to make stuff. I've already got in my head what I might do with them. And it's gone as far as being in the hospital and realising that the infusion lines had these little sort of joints with little green caps on them so they could attach lots of other things. And I thought that, those little joints are quite sort of like they're like natural. They had a nice curve to them. So I thought I can make stems for my wire sculpture flowers out of those. So I use all sorts of stuff. I've recently discovered encaustic, which I'm finding really interesting. I've only had one session at a workshop, but I'm looking forward to using that. What else do I use? Burlap, and found things really. Anything that's things from nature. So like dry acorn cups I find fascinating. I like to paint the inside of them with really brilliant colours and stick them together, and I just like the way they look, and because they're not naturally that colour, and I like the juxtaposition of nature and someone's interference. And it is an interference. I don't think it's about making them even more beautiful, because you can't make nature more beautiful than nature makes it itself. So but yeah. So I was diagnosed here in San Francisco after having been sick for quite a long time in London. So my symptoms appeared, I think maybe December time in 2019, whichever year it was. And I was admitted to hospital in London in the UK, and moved around 3 hospitals because people just weren't really quite sure what was wrong with me. Eventually I had an MRI and they discovered patches on my brain, and they needed to do a biopsy to diagnose whatever that was. And it was a big team of people in the decision-making process, and it was just taking them a very, very long time. And my husband, we were due to come to San Francisco anyway. He got moved over by his company, and I'd given up my job in the city in London to come with him, and then got sick. And I had to stay in London. He came over to San Francisco, and he met a lady at dinner one evening who asked about me. And he'd kept it quiet that I was ill. He was concerned with the new job, that people would be concerned that he'd be distracted maybe. So anyway, he sort of was honest and said, he's not well, he's in London. She asked about what was wrong with me. Her husband was an oncologist, and he said, I think we can find the right person for you, get him over here. So I was transported from the London hospital over to San Francisco really quickly, not into hospital here, but to home, our new home, and saw a team of oncologists within a couple of days. And the first thing they said to me was, we know what's wrong with you. They'd already had all my scans and everything, copies of all my scans and my MRIs. And they said, the only thing we need to do is a biopsy. How do you feel about that? And I was like, oh my God. I was just so overwhelmed that they were saying to me, how do you feel about having a biopsy? And like it was what they wanted to do, and they could do it. So anyway, so I had the biopsy really quickly and got diagnosed the following day, and got diagnosed the same day as the biopsy, and started chemo straight away. So my symptoms were not remembering people's names, I almost developed a stutter. I had left-sided weakness in my hands. And it was really weird. I distinctly remember the moment when I realised something was wrong. And I had my knife and fork on the table, and my plate was in front of me. And I picked up my knife perfectly normally, and I picked up my fork, and my fingers just this really slow, and I couldn't make it any faster, really, really slow grip, and it was really weird. And that was one of the first things. And I'd been waking up in the mornings with double vision, and I was fascinated by it because I felt that I could control it, and I would lie there and I think, no, one vision, just single vision, it will go back to single, and I think, oh, we can fix that. I never even thought that there was something wrong with me, and that was double vision. And that was the very first thing that I now know was a symptom, but I didn't think to tell anyone. I was fascinated by it. The only time I think I've been really scared was when I was told in London that they needed to do a lumbar puncture, and I knew what a lumbar puncture was, and I had kind of thought it might be a possibility, but maybe because they hadn't done it, it wasn't going to happen, and they needed to do it. And it was very difficult. It was very, very uncomfortable. My mum was with me, so she experienced the whole thing, which was awful. And the person that did it was doing a residency. I think they weren't confident, and there was a bit of digging around, and it was really very uncomfortable. Horrible, horrible, horrible moment. But yeah, luckily I've only ever had one lumbar puncture, so... Oh no, I've had two. But I told the person that did the second one what I'd experienced the first time, and they were like, that's not going to happen here. And that was here at UCSF, and it wasn't difficult at all here, so... But yeah, symptoms were an interesting thing. When I look back on it, you know, I just say to people nowadays, if they ask questions about it, that, you know, anything that's different, anything that's not your usual, you really need to tell someone. And it doesn't matter going to the doctor and saying, this is happening to me, and him saying, come back next week, if it's gone, you'll be fine, you're fine. And that's what happens. You haven't wasted anyone's time, you know. We have doctors in our lives because they're there to help us, and they're extraordinary people. So, yeah, it's just the symptoms thing. I'm hyper aware now of how my body feels all the time. And when I talk, I've got it now. I really know it. When I start talking about my brain cancer, I get sensations in my head. I get a tightness underneath my skull on this side of my head. And that really worried me a while back, but now I know that that's what happens when I talk about my brain cancer. My brain kind of goes, oh, it kind of swells a bit, I think. It's because, oh, I'm being talked about.
You're feeling it right now?
Yeah. It's very strange. Wow. But I got very used to it, but yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like I should welcome the brain cancer. Hi.
Yeah.
Your cameo right now.
I never gave it a name.
You didn't? You never gave it a name?
No, and the reason why I didn't give it a name was because I didn't have a single tumour. I had 15 lesions in my first... No, I had 8 lesions in my first diagnosis, and I had 15 lesions in my when I relapsed. And at no point was I going to name a crowd. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a singular mass. And I never ever went through that whole kind of thing of giving it an identity and focusing on that identity being destroyed or anything. I've never felt like I've been in a battle or that I've won anything. The soul made choices about what kind of experiences it might have that it could learn new things from. Because I fundamentally believe that now, that we are, you know, we go on, our souls go on, they go on for forever, they've been around for forever, and the human existence is a huge learning opportunity, and that's the way I look at life. You know, whenever anything happens now, anything at all, something good, something bad, something uncomfortable, nothing's bad now, actually, honestly. I have tough stuff happen to me, but that I might have, prior to my cancer, thought, oh God, I'm so unlucky and this is horrible and how dare people treat me like that. And, you know, now my head just automatically, if it's another person's interaction, an interaction with another person, my head is already in, I wonder if they've had a really bad day. How can I use the right words to try and help them with this, rather than thinking, don't be so rude to me, have a very day, you know.
So you feel like this is almost like a lesson or something, just another experience to learn from?
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's a lesson. I think it's a raising of my awareness of where we are, what we are, why we're here, and it's very freeing, and it's amazing the amount of people I've talked to who have said to me, I feel exactly the same way as you do. The hairs on my arms are going up there. It's, it's extraordinary. And there are moments when I question it, but then straight away it's kind of like, why would I do that? I don't need to do that.
What do you feel like it's taught you?
Kindness, empathy, patience. I have zero anger now. I have zero frustration. I've got the most incredible patience. I've got a good story about that. I was sat on Page Street, where we used to live, on the front steps of the building, waiting for an Uber to arrive. And I looked at my watch and I thought, oh gosh, it's like 7 minutes late. I wonder what's going on. And then straight in my head, I went back to standing on the subway in London, looking up at amongst loads of other people, waiting on my commute to work, and seeing the sign flash up saying delays, and everyone going, oh, there. And I used to be one of those people, and I sat there and I thought, God, this is great. I just don't have that frustration or that anger. I don't have that. Never, these things never get sparked in me. I don't even have the initial kind of feeling of any of those things. And I don't have sadness. I very rarely cry now. I have huge empathy. But the sadness thing, I've been looking after an elderly friend who was recently diagnosed with bladder cancer. She's doing really well. She's been through huge surgery, loads of chemo, but she's out the other side. It's amazing. One of her very best friends died recently, and she had a horrible journey through cancer. And Sarah, the lady that I was looking after, we were talking about it, and she's very pragmatic about these kinds of things. And I felt like I needed to apologise for not getting upset. But in my head I was just thinking, her friend Pat has gone on to the next stage of her existence and she's freed of this. And her soul has gone through that for its own reasons. And, why would you ever want to go through something horrific? I don't understand that bit about it. But knowing that there's something beyond this existence makes me a whole lot more comfortable with my life and less stressed about things, which can be frustrating for your partner and people around you when you just don't get riled by things. If someone comes home from a bad day at work and they share it and you just don't share that riling, I used to in London, hubby would come home or I'd come home, I'd have a bad day, I'd have a go, he'd have a go with me, we'd have a go together. But that doesn't happen anymore. Just don't get frustrated about stuff. So yeah.
How has your relationship with art changed since having cancer, and what role has it played in your healing process?
I was always interested in art and creating things, and always appreciated, or thought I appreciated, other people's art. But having been exposed I could never forget the moment when Ned popped his head round the door and said, do you have anything? Would you like some art materials? And I'm in the space of saying yes to everything because, he considered me, so I'm just not going to say no. And then I can remember saying, oh yeah, but I don't paint. I tried ages ago and I can't do it. And he said, I'll just leave these with you. And that was like the start of the whole thing. And going through that kind of introduction to an environment where whatever you created was not questioned in any kind of critical way, and people's creations were celebrated authentically, means that I've got used to it being okay to do art. Because I can remember when I was working in London and I can't remember what I wanted to do, something, making something. And I was feeling guilty about spending time not doing work stuff. And it was a real issue for me for a while. But now, artists pass of me, and I'm starting to discover, as we've seen today, and you've described today for me so eloquently, that I really do have it in me, and it's a new way. I find it's a new way of expressing myself, which I don't think I had access to previously. I mean, the value of art to us is just so apparent to me now. You know, in its so many ways, it's not just about making something beautiful and selling it for as much as you can sell it for. I mean, with my art, I've just shared it all. I've not been going down the route of. I've thought about it. I've had those conversations with you. We should set up a market stall stand and sell everything. But I just get so much pleasure in giving, and I've done a number of occasions. I haven't done it for a long time now, but I'd sit in the park making sculpture flowers. People would come and sit down. Sometimes they'd say, "Oh, what are you doing?" Or sometimes I'd just say, "Here's a flower for you." Some people go, "Woo," but most of the time people are like, "Oh, that's nice." It's a tricky thing when you talk about being your own advocate, because a lot of people spoke to me about that when I got diagnosed, and I really wasn't quite sure I had the energy for it, really. But I would say, try and find the confidence in your team. Unless something awful is happening and it doesn't feel right, try and find the confidence in your team. You know, every day is a win for a newly diagnosed cancer patient. And it's a win in as much as I woke up this morning, I didn't have a headache. Or, you know, I think noticing the small wins is really important going through this process. Because I used to be a person that needed a really big thing to happen for me to be a happy chap. But actually, I can remember being in hospital, waking up and swinging my legs over the edge of the bed and standing up and thinking, oh, I don't feel wobbly. This is amazing. You know. So the small wins are important. Ask lots of questions. If you don't understand the answers, ask again. And if they can't give you a different answer, ask for someone else to answer your question. And there's someone out there that knows the answer. And they will be, don't expect the word cure to be mentioned very often with cancer. You know, some people can get cured from cancer, but there are lots of cancers out there that are at the moment not curable. And we have to, we're treated and we're medicated to reduce the possibility of relapse. But certainly for my cancer, there's a distinct possibility of it happening again. And if that becomes your experience, you'll find the strength to take that on and just get on with it. And try and live each day as the... I've never done this kind of live each day as though it's my last thing, because I think as soon as you start thinking that way, you bring in the possibility that it could be your last day. So I just don't think in those sorts of terms. I think about, where am I going to go on holiday next? I'm excited for my friends that are going off into the future to do new things. And I look forward to being part of that for as long as I've got. And that's just the way that I work. There's no point in getting sad now about something that might not happen, or will happen at some point in time when we've got no control over it. But, you know, live life. Now, a newly diagnosed person is just trying to find the headspace to accept what's going on, and, you know, being asked loads and loads of questions that they don't have the answers to can be very frustrating. But I'd say don't go to the internet and look up the cancer diagnosis. Do go to the internet and look up for support services for the cancer. There's no point in going down the route of trying to work out why this has happened to your loved one. And, you know, the biggest thing you can do is actually be there for them. And it doesn't need to be in person. It can be on FaceTime. It can be by regular letters. Make some videos. I made so many videos. My friends rolling their eyes at me now, I reckon. But, you know, when I was making videos to update friends, I really felt like I was actually talking to them. I found it very easy to stare at the lens and just talk, and it felt like I was having a conversation. So speaking, just being there speaking makes a huge difference. And also, when you know that your loved one has got an upcoming test or something, or an examination, just wishing them luck and then giving them some time to respond back to you once they've had it, rather than calling them quickly and saying, how did it go? Because sometimes some of these tests take an age to get results back, and And in that time actually, if you know that your loved one's had a test and they've got to wait for a few weeks for the response, it's good to be in contact, but maybe not focusing on the test and just asking them how they're feeling, rather than how do you think the test went. Spiritual awakening during this process, and it happened, it started in UCSF on the ward when I went back for my consolidation after my first rounds of chemo. So I had all the chemo, then I had a break of about, I think, a month system, and give me the opportunity for it to build back up again. During that period of time, I was given dexamethasone, which had a very odd reaction to me, and it just opened up the universe to me. I describe it to people like a mushroom trip. Having never been on one, it's how I imagine it was. But I just went to places that I never imagined I'd go to, and I was shown, in my head, I was taken through my life and shown all of the times when I'd made a decision where the outcome should have been really, really bad, like as bad as death. And I was shown that every single time I came out on top, relatively unscathed. And in my head, trying to make sense of that stuff, it was the thing about everything that I've been put through or I've gone through has been about learning. And it was brought to my attention that I came through that. So what was it about that meant I came through? And it feels like I had my hand held all the way through. So anyway, so I started to believe that I was actually in touch with God, and I'd been confirmed at St. Paul's Cathedral like a couple of years beforehand, and I'd kind of felt there's something of a higher presence, but not quite sure how to deal with it. And then I was at the cathedral and I spoke to the canon, the chaplain, and she said, well, you should get confirmed. So I got confirmed. Then I thought, right, okay, I've done it, that ticked. And then I had a huge guilt trip because I thought, I'm not a real Christian, I shouldn't have got confirmed because I don't think I believe in God. But I did believe in there being some kind of higher energy presence, because energy goes on forever. You can't, energy does not go anywhere, and we know that atoms attract each other, and energy begets energy, and I can't go into the detail of it because I haven't got all the knowledge. But I know that energies across spaces can interact with each other, and we're all full of energy. We're energy. We're the material version of energy. And I just thought, okay, so this higher being or divine, whatever it was, is actually talking to me, and I started to get messages, and I in my sleep at night time I would close my eyes and I could guide myself to these places and have conversations. And it wasn't language conversations. It was like I was being given the knowledge, and I went on this extraordinary journey where I was in a very fast-moving vehicle, and we dipped down into a very dark space, and then we went up to another space that was a bit smoky and not very nice, and then up and out and into the most beautiful countryside with people partying and laughing and singing, and the flowers were all brilliant and the animals were all beautiful, and I went to in these vision times I went to this place where I was on a barge on the Thames in London, and in this massive festival, and there were huge marine animals coming out of the river, and people dancing and morphing into different things, and acrobats flying and then becoming butterflies, and it was like really trippy. But I was just convinced. And then I got this kind of sensation that I was actually on earth I was being shown all this stuff because I was on earth to tell people that there is beyond, because I believed I'd seen heaven, I'd been to heaven, I'd seen heaven, I knew what it was like, and I felt like I needed to tell people, and I had an idea that this God or this being, whatever, had said to me, I want you to do it, you're there. So I started telling people this, and I believed that I was the returned Christ, Jesus Christ. And I started telling people that. I didn't have any other language, and it was just coming out of me. Anyway, a bunch of carol singers came onto the ward at Christmas time, and I told them, I need you to stop singing and listen to me. And anyway, I got held down by security and ended up at the Porter Langley Psychiatric Hospital for a few nights, at which I had a great time talking to all these people that I thought didn't know what they were saying, but I probably didn't know what I was saying either. But so that was unexpected, even though my oncologist had said to me in consolidation, sometimes people have really weird adverse reactions. During all of that time, I wasn't really thinking that it was an adverse reaction. But I do now know that the things that I saw were authentic, and I do believe that I was shown what life is like beyond the human existence, and it gives me great sort of confidence, and I look forward to the next phase of my existence. And I think if people have the opportunity to go through those experiences, not so as sort of nasty as some of mine were, but just to be given the opportunity to see that and experience it, then there'll be a lot of people on earth that are a lot more relaxed about the end of this existence and where we go next. And I now can fundamentally believe that we go on in some other form probably, but maybe back into a human body. I do spend quite a lot of time thinking about what I'd like to come back as. I think I'd like to be an acrobat. Anyway, that's it, yeah. Flowers, the wire sculpture flowers came about when I was with a lady who was at outpatients infusion. I got on with her really well, and it was pre-Christmas time, and she said, would you like to come with me? Every Christmas I go to this store on Chestnut Street, and I get a glass bauble. I close my eyes and thrust my hand into this big display, like a Christmas tree shaped display of glass baubles, and I pick a glass bauble, and she said, would you like to come with me and do it together? And I said, yes, of course I would. We went into the store, and in the ceiling there were these wire sculpture chandeliers, and there were birds' nests with birds flying around them. And I immediately thought, I can do that. I think I can do that. And anyway, so I got some of the wire, and I had to go, and I just couldn't do it. But I discovered that there was, because it wasn't malleable enough, I think I got the wrong type of wire. And but it felt like I needed to do this, you know. It was quite sudden. I hadn't thought in my life, oh, I'd love to play with wire to make things, but it just seemed right. And anyway, I found some thinner wire and managed to fiddle around with it. And I tried to make the nests, and they were falling apart. And it just kind of, the shapes were similar to flower shapes. And so then I started to play with it and make petal shapes, really sort of naive ones. And it kind of developed from there. And then I found that I could make other shapes and interpret the flowers differently, and now they're very different to how they were to begin with. Whereas they're a bit more, what are they? They're not contemporary, they're organic, yeah. So, my name is Stephen, and I am Art for Recovery.